are the champion, the one that holds the line and finishes the mission. Everything that you want is within your grasp. You wake up in the morning ready to dominate the day, and every step taken is with purpose and integrity, because you were not put on this planet to live a mediocre existence. You are here to conquer and make the biggest impact possible, not only for yourself, but for your family and for your tribe. This world is a battlefield, and we will be victorious. This is the Norse Mentality.
What's up, guys? I hope that you are having the most glorious day ever. Today, me and Cowboy Cody here are going to continue a conversation that we had on the previous episode. So that episode was all about following your own path, living a life that is true to you and not living a life that was set by the expectations of other people and by society. This conversation that we are going to have today is about losing yourself in order to discover who you truly are. Now, I'm going to start this off by saying this is the hardest work that anyone can possibly do, and it's also never ending. This is something that you're going to do for the rest of your life. But the first portion of this is very difficult, and then life gets a lot easier. So with that being said, in order to really discover what kind of life you want to live, you have to discover who you are at the deepest level. You need to remove the programming that was set by your parents, by society, and by the outside world in general, and find out what you stand for. What are your morals and values? And then from there, you can create your best life possible. And you can also create the best version of you possible because you know what that looks like. But there's no way to accomplish all of that unless you dive into the unknown, unless you dive into yourself and do this inner work. And with that being said, what is the first step here? What is the first thing that we need to do? We need to take it all the way back to childhood. Because the first 7 years of your life, you are the most programmable because we all live in theta. And then around 7, we start to switch there and we start to kind of gather our own opinions and stuff like that. But those first 7 years, you're a sponge. You're just listening to other people, mostly your parents, teachers, stuff like that. And you're taking in all of their beliefs, which was probably someone else's beliefs, and a culture as a whole. And then that is being programmed into you. And then that is the very unfortunate aspect of this.
I think that's something that a lot of people don't understand when they have children or when they are around a bunch of kids in that early age, maybe a daycare or something. You are a sponge from 0 to 7 years old.
Knowing that is the most frightening thing as a parent for me. I feel like every single thing I say, every action I take could impact her in a positive or a negative way. Now, I know that I've already done some things that she's going to have to unfuck herself with, which is unfortunate, but luckily I'm going to be there to help her with it, hopefully, But at the same time, yeah, like it makes me a better parent to understand that I am programming this little girl and I need to be very careful with what I'm doing. Because this is someone else's life on the line here. Whatever I'm like putting into her little brain at this state could dictate who she is in 20 years. So that is a very important thing for us to understand here if we do have kids or if we plan on having kids or if you're even around kids in general. They're watching every single thing you do, what you say, what you express to them, your thoughts, your ideas and stuff like that. They're taking that in. And we need to try to make sure that they are as positive as possible. But that's another reason why we need to do this inner work. Because how can we show up for our kids and for our friends and for everyone else in our life if we don't know who we are and what we believe in and what we consider to be truth? So what do I mean by truth here? It's everything. It's questioning your entire existence. Every single thing that you've ever been told needs to be questioned here. There's a timeline, and this is something that me and you were talking about earlier. I'll let you dive into it. What is this timeline here?
Yeah, we'll talk about it. So we mentioned 0 to 7. You're in theta state. You're an absolute sponge. You're kind of at the mercy of your environment. because you can't leave or do anything. You can't do that until you're in your 20s. So 0 to 7, you're a sponge. You start formulating your own opinions a little bit after that, like you said. Puberty as a teenager, and then every influence you have while you're a teenager impacts. I think those impacts can be super heavy and life-changing, whether they're positive or negative at that age. And then I think the majority of people think they start to solidify themselves in their early 20s, I would say from 20 to 25. But if this isn't questioned between 25 and 30, when your brain really starts to mature and you really start to do this work, if this is not something you do, then you get stuck with all of that shit previously, and that is just how you live your life moving forward.
It dictates every decision that you make. It dictates your entire outside reality. It's based off what other people thought, what other people believed in. That is not true to you. And that's why we need to do this. We have to have the courage to do this inner work, because we need to live our own life. You need to live a life that aligns with your morals and values and what you actually consider to be the truth. You're going to hear me say the truth a lot on this episode. And what that means is for you to find out for yourself. What me and Cody are going to talk about here is what we have discovered for ourselves. Now, you brought this timeline here. Your brain stops maturing around 25, right? Or around that age, like
that's
neuroplasticity and stuff like that really starts to solidify around 25. So really up until you're 25, you're just kind of coasting through life, getting in experiences, all this good stuff. You don't really have to start taking shit seriously yet. Then around 25 to 30, it's like, okay, I need to really start figuring out what I want to do moving forward. And that's usually when people are starting new jobs, they decide they want to have a family and stuff like that. Now, for me, this happened around 29. Right around 29, my entire world fell apart. And what I mean by that is every single thing that I thought was true, I found out was a lie. And that was the hardest year of my life, because it wasn't like I just woke up one day and I was like, oh, this is a lie and this is the truth. It was, what the fuck is going on, right? Like I didn't know what was real, what wasn't. I didn't know who I was. I was completely lost. And being lost is the most frightening thing, especially when you're lost within yourself, but then also lost in the outer world. When you can no longer look at people the same way. When you no longer look at yourself the same way. It was a very hard time for me, but it was also the most life-changing experience I've ever had up to this point. There's no way that this podcast would exist if I did not go through this major change. If I didn't start doing this inner work. That's also when I started diving deep into meditation. That's when I started reading a lot about different spirituality ideas and stuff like that. And what that did was it opened up my mind, but I would have never had that open mind if I didn't start to question everything around me. And for me, that was relationships, work, spirituality, who I was, what I wanted, what I didn't want, my view of other people, my view of myself. Every single thing that you can possibly think of, I started questioning. And the answers I started getting shattered my entire world. And then after about a year and a half of just straight suffering, I came out of that with complete clarity. Now, I'm still working on this. Every day I feel like I'm discovering something new, especially about myself. But because I had this initial life-shattering experience or reality-shattering experience, or whatever you want to call it, I just realized that this is now part of the process. I was very humbled. That's what I can say here. I was humbled by the entire experience, because when I was 27, 28, I thought I was king of the fucking world. I thought I had it all figured out. I was killing it. And then I found out I didn't know a damn thing. And from that point forward, I still don't think I know anything. I was humbled to the highest degree. And now I can have conversations with other people, and I can listen to their words. I can read books, whatever it may be, and I'm able to dissect it. and I'm able to take pieces from it and be like, yeah, like this makes sense to me. This is a really cool conversation that maybe I want to dive into on my own time. Maybe I want to like have a whole thought-provoking session with this. I want to meditate on it, whatever it may be. But you can't ever get to that point until you're willing to do so, until you're willing to let go of everything that you thought was real.
Until you solidify yourself as this new person. Because if you're solid in who you are and confident in who you are, that core, that base doesn't change after doing that initial chunk of work. And that's the cool thing about this. Like that initial chunk of realization and questioning and everything, that's the hardest part. And then you learn how to deal with it, and it gets way easier in the future. Mine started at about 26, and I would say I started questioning things at 26. I didn't really know how to deal with that at the time, but at least the ball got rolling then. And I would say 27 in this past year, I'm about to be 29. I would say 27, 28. I really went into that deep work, and I questioned, how I was raised, what I learned throughout school, how I was raised with religion, and all of these things that programmed me to be who I was at that age.
And what you mean by program, I mean, that's everything in the external world. That's social media, that's the movies that you watch, the TV shows you watched growing up, what your parents told you, what other family members told you, what your friends told you, that their parents told them. We don't realize how much information is coming in on a daily basis that could potentially alter our reality and our thought processes and how we perceive the world. Now, I'm glad that you brought up the confidence thing, because I don't think it's possible for someone to truly be confident unless they have done this inner work. I think it's very easy to bullshit confidence. That's what I did. That's what you did as well in our younger years. But now I can say with absolute certainty that I'm a very confident person. And it's because I know who I am. And that's why I think this kind of work is so detrimental for everyone on this planet that they need to do, because without confidence, you have nothing. You're not going to pursue life. You're not going to take risks that could potentially bring you so many amazing opportunities if you don't have confidence in yourself in order to persevere no matter what comes your way. And the only way to do that is to face yourself. Face your demons, face the good, the bad, all of it. Accept it for what it is. Accept it for who you are. And to touch on that, we have different things here. There is what society says that we need to think and act according to their rules, which was created by man. They don't exist in the natural world. It's not like there's a fucking book in the natural world that all animals follow. No, man and religion decided rules that we need to follow. And some of them are very good rules. We should follow them because they make you a good person. Without that, like, man can be a very evil, I would say it's probably the most evil species to ever exist. We're fucked. If we don't have these rules in place and these kind of like guidelines to follow, we can be our worst enemy. But at the same time, we need to acknowledge here that there is evil within us. All of us have it. There is that monster inside of you that is capable of absolutely terrible things. That's not good. That's not bad. That's just the reality of the situation. And whenever you go diving into yourself and you start discovering these things, you don't judge it, because what that does is it leads to self-hatred. And you're going in the opposite direction here. You're pulling away instead of diving into it. Whenever you discover these things about yourself that you think are bad, keep going in. Realize it for what it is. Don't label it as good or bad. Just be like, hey, this is part of me. I don't know why, but this is who I am. But what that does is allows you to control it moving forward.
It allows you to work on it.
It allows you to work on it. It allows you to integrate it. Carl Jung talks about integrating the shadow. That's all that is. It's taking the good, which is what ego is, how we present ourselves to the world, however society says that we need to live life, how we need to present ourselves to other people and all this other stuff. And then there's the shadow, which is the primitive side. Before there were rules, how did we act out in the natural world? And a lot of that is bad, but there's also good in there. That's where people can learn to be assertive. If you're someone that just doesn't stand up for themselves, it's because at some point in your life, someone told you that was bad. Probably your parents. Don't do that. You shouldn't act like that. You were 4 years old, just being you. And someone told you it was bad to act like that on a repeating basis. So now you as an adult are unable to be assertive. Well, if you're not assertive with yourself, you are going to get walked over all the damn time. So realizing that there is this assertive part of you that right now you consider to be bad, if you bring that to the surface and you integrate that in your life and you're able to control it, guess what? You're going to be accomplishing so much more with your time here on earth in this limited amount of time that you have. So whenever you dive into yourself with this inner work, when you discover these bad things, who are you to say that it's good or bad? You need to question that for yourself. Do I actually think this is a bad trait, or is this something that my parents said was a bad trait? It's just like, it's like men and emotions. Men aren't allowed to have emotions. Who the fuck came up with that rule? Men aren't allowed to cry. You're telling, what? It's a releasing of emotion. It is a very natural thing. But society has convinced men that they're not able to talk about their feelings. They're not able to express their emotions. They have to put on this front. They're not able to break down. And guess what? They just suppress it. And then they end up breaking down and ruining their entire life instead of just letting this shit out. So when we dive in and we do this inner work, that's what we're discovering here. This is what we're questioning. We're questioning, how do I actually feel? What parts of me am I suppressing that I could actually be bringing into the surface that would move me forward in life? Like anger. Let's talk about anger. Anger can be a very negative thing if you allow it to be, but anger can also be a very, very beneficial tool if used properly. You do Muay Thai. If you're able to control that anger in Muay Thai, and you're able to harness that energy of anger, but not lose control from that anger, you're unstoppable. Anger is what allows you to run through an army of 500 men and not give a single fuck. Anger is what allows you to become unstoppable if it is controlled. Well, the only way that we learn to control these things is by discovering them in the first place, bringing them to the surface and keeping watch over it. Okay, I know this about myself now. Great. That means I have self-awareness now, and all you need is self-awareness. It's like with bad habits. You don't realize that you have a bad habit until you realize that you do, and then from that point forward, it's very easy to break a bad habit. But until you do that inner work and you discover what that bad habit is, it's not going to happen.
I think most of these things that will come to the surface, I think people will find that it is rooted in their childhood. There's a lot of childhood trauma that comes to the surface. It did in my case, for sure. I think the important thing is when these things do come to the surface, it's nothing punitive or nothing to beat yourself up about.
No.
It's gonna feel personal. Like it's gonna hurt. But understand that you're trying to dig to the root of that problem in order to fix it. If it's not moving you forward, or at least come to some sort of understanding of what it is and why you are this way.
So I think that's the important part for people to realize is we're not necessarily trying to discover where this stemmed from, because you probably don't remember it. It could be, I know a lot of mine are probably from the time I was like 2 to 3.
Especially if that part of your life was you in pure survival mode.
Right. And you're not going to remember a lot of this shit. You completely blocked it out. We don't need to remember the root of the problem. We just need to realize the problem in the first place. And then that way we can do whatever we want with it. But we don't have to sit there and waste time being like, where did this stem from? I just can't figure it out. It doesn't matter if you remember where it came from or not. We can assume that it came from childhood probably, but maybe not. I've had experiences in my 20s that were very traumatic for me that I later had to unfuck myself, that I'm still unfucking myself from. So there is this whole thing that like, yeah, childhood, everything happens from childhood. I'm not a psychologist. I don't know, but I am very well aware that there is shit from my 20s, not that long ago, that impacted me at such a dramatic level that I'm still trying to resolve because I get triggered by it. Well, this reminds me of this time. Well, that's the first time I remember feeling this way. Okay, well, there you go. But discovering the root problem here, is it good if you can do so? Absolutely. Why not? That's great. That's going to help you a lot. But that's not necessarily the objective here. The objective here is just to discover it, to come face to face with it. That way you can have self-awareness and you can control it moving forward, because these past experiences is what is controlling your triggers and what is shaping your reality in the current form. And once we can grab hold of that, then we're good. It's not going to be easy, but we have a lot more control over it, meaning that we're not going to get into as many arguments with people. We're not going to look down on people as much. We're going to have more compassionate for other people as well, because we realize that about ourselves. This is something that I've dealt with too. And this person's probably dealing with something similar, because here is the biggest secret of all, guys. Everyone is fucked up. Everyone. Every person is messed up in some way or another. Some people have a little bit less. Some people have more. Some people just deal with it better than others. But
some people hide it well.
Some people hide it very well. That's most people, but it always comes to the surface. So when we can sit there and be like, okay, there's things with me that are fucked up. But guess what? There's things with everyone else that's fucked up. That's where the compassion for yourself comes from. That's why we shouldn't beat ourselves up when we discover these things, like you were saying. It's just a matter of, okay, this is part of me. I don't know where it came from, but it's here. How do I deal with it now? And it's by discovering it. So let's move on to the next part of this. How do we discover it? We have to spend time alone. There is no other way to do this. You have to be okay with spending time in solitude, away from everyone and everything. That means not reading books. That means not being on your phone. That means not being around a single person. You have to be willing to spend time by yourself. And the reason that I brought up the books and social media and stuff like that is because that is all someone else's information coming into you. And the more information that you have coming in on a daily basis, the less time that you're going to have to dive deeper into yourself, because now you're trying to process all this external shit. So the more that you can eliminate external factors, that's going to speed up this process a lot. Whenever I did this around 29, I didn't know this is what I was doing, but I'm very glad that it happened this way. I deleted all social media for 9 months. I did it because I was in a very rough place mentally, and I just knew that this is not helping, so I just deleted it. And another reason being that I didn't know who I was anymore. I knew that I was presenting myself as this certain person on social media, but that was a lie. And whenever I no longer knew who I was, I sure as hell did not feel comfortable putting something else out there, a different persona, because that's what I was doing. And once I realized that, I'm like, oh no, this is fake. This is not authentic. And I'm not going to present myself to the world, especially when my company is a reflection of me. So I pulled the plug on it. I stopped hanging out with people. The only books I was reading were things that I knew would help me on this. And it was mostly stuff about meditation and shit, like just information. It was tools that I needed. You know, I wasn't necessarily taking in other people's information. I was just gathering tools that I could then implement into my own life. But, you know, I was meditating for at least an hour a day. There were some days where I was meditating for 2 to 3 hours a day. I was in the woods nonstop. I know you started going through this same thing, just spending a lot more time in nature, less time on social media. But we have to eliminate this external stimulus of information that's coming in as much as possible, because we're not going to be able to dive into ourselves if we're trying to process this stuff.
Especially in such a vulnerable state. I don't think a lot of people understand how easily influenced you are in extreme and vulnerability.
It's at all times. And it doesn't matter how much you think that you have your shit together, you can still very easily be influenced by other people. That's why I don't listen to podcasts anymore. I realized this about a year and a half ago, maybe a year ago. I don't know. It was around the time I started the Norse Mentality. But I stopped listening to podcasts because I caught myself regurgitating the same shit that I heard other people saying. And I didn't realize it while it was happening. Is whenever I still re-listen to our episodes, that way I could find ways to improve on it. I would re-listen to it and I'm like, for fuck's sake, man, that's not even your words. You're just regurgitating what someone else said. Now, was the information true? Yeah. But I was pretty much saying the exact same thing as them verbatim.
There was no original thought.
Yeah, those were no longer my words. Those were someone else's words. So I pulled the plug on that. I don't listen to podcasts anymore. Every once in a while, I'll listen to Huberman, but it's because it's something completely different. And Huberman just provides tools. And it's not necessarily what we're doing with the podcast, with the Norse Mentality. But we are so acceptable at all times to new ideas. And we need to be very careful about what we're taking in. And we need to question every single thing that we're taking in. Me and Cody can only share our opinions and our thoughts and what we consider to be the truth. But that does not mean that it is the same for you. You need to question every single thing that we're saying. If something doesn't seem right to you, then it's probably not for you. And that's okay. We don't sit here and try to say, yeah, we're gurus, we know it all. We don't really know a single fucking thing. We've just done some work on ourselves in order to be like, okay, well, this is what I think about this. What do you think? And then we put it out there into the world. And if it helps you, then great. If not, that's okay as well. But if at any point someone is telling you something or you're reading a book or whatever information is coming in, if it doesn't sit right with you, dissect it. Question that.
I think it is very important, going on with that topic, you should dig into what you're listening to. As far as like the books you're reading, dig into the author, see what they're about. Dig into, whatever you're consuming, dig into the source of it and see if that source is valid. Because a lot of people these days, they just spew and spew and spew, and they're influential people. They might be a little misguided. So if you're reading a book with someone who is not a solid person and does not have a good belief, moral value system, that is not helping you.
Right. We also need to even think about the music that we listen to. This is something that most people don't realize. The music that you listen to can impact your mood and also your beliefs as well. Let's use country music as an example. When you listen to country music, all country music is about some chick leaving you or some dude leaving you, drinking beer, and riding a tractor or some shit. And
dirt roads and trucks.
Dirt roads and trucks, and every once in a while they'll throw their dog in that died about 10 years ago. But it's very hard to listen to a country song and not think about your ex and not want a beer. There's been plenty of times when I don't usually listen to country, but if it's on or something, and I've noticed that where I'm like, I really want a beer. I don't drink, but I listen to country music. I'm like, I could really use a beer right now. It's funny, but at the same time, it's the truth. It's the same with a lot of other music. If you're listening to music that's just about taking drugs and shit like that, you're probably going to be doing drugs. Now, if you want to do drugs, cool. That's up to you. I don't give a shit. But if you're someone that doesn't want to live that type of lifestyle, then don't listen to that type of music. We need to be careful about what we are allowing other people to put into our brain, and that what we are allowing people to shape our reality, because that is what they are doing. Neither you can be conscious of that or you cannot be conscious of it. To wrap this up, I want to go into a little bit more about how this is not easy. It's not easy to sit by yourself. Most people, I would say 95% of the population, cannot sit with themselves for more than 5 minutes without freaking out. That is very unfortunate, because all you have in this world at the end of the day is yourself. Yes, you have a relationship with a partner, you have friends, you might have kids, you have parents, you have all these other people. But at the end of the day, you only have yourself. You are the last person that you are with before your time here on earth is gone. Get to know yourself and be okay with doing that.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Norse Mentality. This podcast is a byproduct of Norse Fitness.
We make clothing, fitness accessories, supplements, and other tools to help you reach your true potential. You can check it out at norsefitness.co. And if you found this episode beneficial, please share it with a friend. That way we can continue to make a bigger impact and change the world. Thank you for your support, and we'll talk to you soon.